All right, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on Agentic Data Engineering with DuckDB, migrating from BigQuery with AI agents. We have some really great things to talk through today. A quick round of introductions. My name is Jenny Hurn. I am Chief of Staff at Ascend.io, but more importantly and more excitingly, with me, I have Shaheen Essabhoy. Shaheen is the senior data lead at Podia, who has been orchestrating this migration from BigQuery to DuckDB, has learned some amazing lessons along the way. And I am just so excited to have you with us, Shaheen. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for the intro, Jenny. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I know in the prep for this call, like the depth of the lessons you've learned in this journey of migrating from BigQuery to DuckDB and doing that with AI, I think is so relevant to so many people who are trying to figure out how do we modernize our stack? How do we cut costs? All of these different things. And so I'm really grateful for your time today, for the lessons that you're going to share with the rest of the community here. Could you just give us a little bit of a picture of your landscape to start? Paint us a picture of what your day-to-day life looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Going to start just briefly. So, obviously, small company out here. So, a rundown of what Podia is right now. It's essentially just a hosting platform that empowers creators, entrepreneurs, etc., to sell digital products, memberships, and online courses all in one place. So, obviously, focus for us is really giving customers a way to do this in a simple and easy way. And that same focus really just translates over for us, given that we are a team of 22 and our data team is just me. So, with such a lean setup, efficiency becomes so critical. And as many people on this call know, chasing down broken pipelines is an hour that you are taking away from generating insights that are actually driving that business forward. So that need for efficiency is really what prompted our migration from BigQuery to a combined DuckDB and Crunchy architecture. And we'll get into this a little bit more in later slides, but as a quick rundown, you can see our data stack in the top right-hand corner. DuckDB, obviously running on Ascend's platform, has been serving as our intermediate compute layer. So it's given us a far more cost-effective way to perform those data transformations on our upstream data, which BigQuery was previously doing for us. And then now Crunchy Data Warehouse has become our centralized data warehouse. So think of it replacing, again, BQ or Snowflake, etc. And it's serving to support all of our analytics and downstream platforms. And then Mode has been our tried and true. We've been on it since I've been with Podia, and it's an awesome BI tool. It keeps reporting just very simple and intuitive. So very grateful for it. And then obviously Ascend has served as our orchestration. It's helped our pipelines end to end, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, we love working with you. And I think it's so relevant for people to hear of all sizes of data teams. Like every hour you're spending fixing a broken pipeline is an hour that you're not spending creating value. I think we feel that more when our teams are smaller, but I think that's still relevant to, organizations at every size because the demands on data teams right now are so extreme. The demand for data that can fuel businesses is so intense right now. And so I think even teams that who are, teams of one like yourself or teams who have hundreds of people, I think that probably still feels very resonant. So you talked about how you did this migration from BigQuery to DuckDB and Crunchy Data Warehouse. What were some of your goals in that migration?
Yeah. So handful of clear motivators for moving off of GCP, and just want to call out the timing really worked out perfectly for us with Ascend's Gen 3 launch, and it made the migration a whole lot smoother than it otherwise would have. But just at a high level, I would say it was cutting costs, simplifying our data stack, and then improving performance across the board. So largely like just going off of that first data point below, moving off of BigQuery's compute model and using DuckDB in conjunction with Iceberg data storage has truly just brought our costs down so much. And then shifting our analytics warehouse onto Crunchy, actually a key motivator there was bringing us live data replication, which was a huge win for tools like reverse ETLs and really just keeping our analytics consistently up to date for teams that really need it, like support. Beyond that, consolidating our stack, as I mentioned, was huge. So specifically between data and engineering, there was kind of a little bit of a silo here. They are using Crunchy Bridge for our Postgres replica. And so I was solely working in BQ. No one really had access to our analytics warehouse. They did, but no one's trying to touch multiple things. So moving it all into one spot really made us work a little bit more collaboratively, which is great. And then, as I mentioned, Iceberg, great, super cost effective, but is also just so much more efficient than using Postgres alone, as it's not really made as an analytics platform. So this has been great for us. And for the most part, Ascend has been super helpful in orchestrating all of this. On point number 5 out there, I had mentioned the historical reporting capabilities. We're a little funky in the sense that we really cost save in a lot of ways. So we delete a lot of our historical data, and Ascend has helped us to create ways to preserve that on the analytics end, specifically for things like forecasting and really just doing analytics in general. You need that past data.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So going into like a little bit more of the deeper dive into what that looks like, can you tell us a little bit about, your architecture? What is your sources? What are you doing with that data and where is it ending up?
Yeah, definitely. So at Podia, it's coming from a few sources listed on the left there. So first, as I mentioned, we have our Postgres replica, which is primarily server-side data about our customers. This lives in Crunchy Bridge. It's 200 plus tables that we're parsing, analyzing a lot just as we need that data coming in. Then we pull in customer and marketing interactions from Intercom, payment and subscription info from Stripe, and then we have a lot of our event tracking data stored in RudderStack. And then once it's all in, we're processing it for the tried and true purposes that most analytics teams are using, running customer analytics to understand, behavior, retention, engagement, financial analytics for revenue, subscriptions, marketing metrics to track a lot of that campaign performance, and then internal reporting, which is dashboards, operational insights, etc. Yeah, and then targets, again, all listed on the right there, but data's going out to the places we need it. So Mode, as I mentioned, building dashboards, reports, etc. Crunchy is serving as our central warehouse for analytics and other downstream uses, as I mentioned, things like our reverse ETL, etc. We are using Slack for internal alerts, communication. Again, small, scrappy team, got to get things out there. And then, yeah, our reverse ETL, as I mentioned, is going out to a lot of tools, mostly Intercom, so both marketing and support can better target customers, help customers, etc. And then finally, using it all for forecasting models to predict trends.
That's super cool. And I know we talked a little bit before this call too about how you're using all of that data, to really serve your customers, which is so valuable to them as, you're serving entrepreneurs, small businesses who need that data to really operate as efficiently as possible. I think these are just really fun. I'm excited to see the pipelines that you're going to show later, but I definitely think a lot of people on this call resonate with, got a lot of sources, got to get it a lot of different places. How do I manage that chaos and do it as efficiently as possible? So can you tell us a little bit about like your current data stack and how that's really served you as you've been modernizing?
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I might start on the right because I love talking about Ascend. But yeah, just starting with Otto, because SQL syntax doesn't translate super one-to-one between all our databases, Otto has saved us so much time in terms of just like digging through code and making like very small, trivial syntax changes during the migration. It's honestly done it for us, which is amazing. It was also super helpful with just the Gen 2 to Gen 3 move, in addition to your entire team. But having an AI assistant to just bounce questions off of and help to optimize in the new tooling was so helpful. And then lastly, just again, data team of one, not having someone to bounce questions off in general, or just debugging things. It's saved hours that I would like previously just be in a realm of trying to debug and your brain gets stuck and you don't have anyone there. So Otto's been great for all of that. Also, the incremental and smart components, so big just in terms of being able to not reprocess all of our data at once, which has been so cost saving compared to what we were previously doing. And we'll get into that when we talk about flows. I've also heavily relied on Python tasks now. Python was a huge addition in Gen 3 for us. It was already kind of there in Gen 2, but got so much better. So it's really given me full flexibility with custom logic and making APIs super easy to pull in and extract exactly as we need, especially before we move into some of those more downstream tables. Another huge win for us was the Ginger parameters in Gen 3. They're working a lot like DBT, and I think everyone's had to use it in some form. And so it's made our pipelines so much more dynamic, especially when you're thinking about trying to sessionize millions of rows of event data from like a rudder stacker segment. And then last call out is all of the lineage and observability features that are now in Gen 3, already sorted there in Gen 2, but now I feel like we truly have complete visibility into how things are moving, and it's made debugging so much easier. And then moving on to DuckDB, reasons to love it are honestly pretty simple once you start using it. It's super fast for analytics, especially inside Ascend itself. Obviously, a huge win for cost optimization because we're no longer really paying for warehouse compute at all on every transformation that we do. And it's just simplified our storage as well. So we can really easily work with iceberg tables again without needing that heavyweight engine powering all of this stuff. So truly a great little data stack. We've added a few things into it, but the performance has been the same or better as using a cloud warehouse.
That's awesome. Yeah, we love DuckDB for all of these reasons. It is so simple to work with, so fast. And I think we really subscribe to kind of their philosophy that you don't always need a mega warehouse to process all of your data. You can operate pretty efficiently and effectively at a smaller scale. Yeah, and I do think the combination is really fun. And I love hearing you talk about Ascend. We love working with you. And it's just a fun thing to work all together and to collaborate in this what we like to brand as like the delightful data stack where you just get this fun, simple data stack to work with that just serves your team in whatever way. Enough about Ascend. Let's look at the pipelines that you're building because I think that's so exciting. And I think that kind of will help people understand a little bit more about what you're doing in day to day life and how it interacts with these tools.
Yeah, I wanted to give an example of how it all came together, but also give something that was relevant to probably most teams out here since almost everyone's on Stripe at this point. So here's our current flow for processing our Stripe data. I'm sure more tables will come in over time. But essentially on the left here, we're just ingesting several tables from our Stripe API. And each of them is processed incrementally using an SCD type of timestamp field. So again, avoiding reprocessing every day and able to just pull in the new things. And then once that data is in, we're able to build our holistic like invoice table that's really just pulling everything together from discount codes to subscription details to payment info basically all the pieces we need consolidated into one. For anyone, again, that's worked with the API, you know how split up all of these things are. So having it in one place is a great starting point. Then that downstream invoice table is powering a few of our key reporting tables, including the ones we use to track customer state each day, MRR over time, etc. And then this is truly where Gen 3 has come in and been a game changer for us. So back on BigQuery and Gen 2, kind of mentioned this before, but we were reprocessing these massive tables every single day, specifically things like our subscription state table. So it was rewriting for every customer where they were, even though that data was not changing. So now we are only looking at the last 48 hours of data and processing just those new or updated rows, which is, again, a huge win for a table of this size. And then another cool thing about this one that was sort of why I wanted to show it, we're also using custom Python flows in this flow itself to build things like our customer lifecycle table. So these flows read from our already processed tables in our warehouse and only update, again, the rows that actually need to be changed. So for example, fields like lifetime paid days or churn count are getting updated incrementally as long as the customer's subscription is still active or as soon as they churn in that new batch of data coming in. And then the code snippet to the right there is just kind of showing how we're using Ginger parameters in our transformations to actually do this and only process more recent data.
This is super cool. I feel like I would love a blog post on exactly what you're doing here. This is really, really cool things that you're doing. And I think so relevant. Like you said, so many teams are using Stripe. Our own internal pipelines at Ascend use Stripe. And I know building out that pipeline was a journey for our team too. And so I think it's really great to see this final product that you delivered and how it's serving your team now. Yeah, I think too, just like walking through some of what you're seeing on the screen for folks who are like brand new to seeing this interface with Ascend, the blue components are typically ingestion and like reading and writing data out. So that's what you kind of see here is you have your ingestion. The teal is transformation. So it looks like these are SQL mostly, a little bit of Python transformation that you're doing, and then again, writing that data out to those external sources. So this is really cool. Anything else you want to share on this flow?
Yeah, to your earlier point, I feel like it's super helpful to see that like blue on the left is obviously pulling in from our Postgres replica source, but the green is kind of all for the most part in DuckDB other than that one Python component. And then you're seeing it transform back out into our Postgres warehouse in those right components. So you're really able to see the like progression over time as well.
Yeah, you get all that lineage, and then you get the see how the run history is going over time, and like, oh, this isn't where I want it to be, or this is taking longer than I thought it would, and can dive into all of those specifics there. It's really great. Cool. Well, my next question for you is we titled this Agentic Data Engineering, and I know you do a lot of work with AI. So I think a lot of people would love to hear how are you leveraging AI in the migration? How did you leverage it? But also now outside of migration work, what purpose is AI serving for you?
Yeah, so feel like I've talked about it a bit in previous slides and Otto just being a complete game changer for us. But I'll just add in that I truly use it every day. It's been huge throughout the migration, as you mentioned, as we're just trying to debug and get things up and running. But honestly, just bouncing things off in terms of making things a little bit smarter or more efficient or finding new ways to do it, Otto's been such a big help in terms of all of that. And it honestly making you think in different ways too, in terms of I would have done this with SQL, but honestly, Python's going to be way more efficient here to pull in what I need. Or, how can we run incremental things in a different way, smart transforms, etc. Things that you wouldn't instinctively go to, but yeah, it's helping you learn and also just get to a point where things are so much more efficient than they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's one of my favorite things about AI generally is that I just feel like I'm learning so much all the time. It's such a delight to be like, I can ask this question, I can get an answer back that like makes sense to the level that I'm at, and it's helping me. I can talk through a problem with someone else or just with, I guess, something else that helps me evaluate things in a different way. I think another idea that I had too is I don't know if you're using Otto at all for like alerting. I know you said Slack notifications and stuff. Are you using kind of those automated pieces where you're using AI to monitor your pipelines yet?
That is truly our next step. We are currently using it for tools like RudderStack, and it's so helpful to get those alerts every day of just like ingestion has dropped, 10% today. Are you sure nothing's up with the pipelines? And so once we're in a state where I'm confident in our data, that is truly the next thing is bringing it into a tool like Slack so we can monitor.
Awesome. Yeah, it is really fun to kind of get to extend that agentic behavior with MCP servers and all those fun tools that are out there to kind of help us bring our agents into the tool stack beyond just the tools that they live in. So that's really awesome. Okay, last slide here, but I think this is really the bulk, the meat of the wisdom that you have to offer us too. What are the key lessons that you have as you've gone through this journey of going from BigQuery to DuckDB?
Yeah, obviously have a lot to say here, as you can see with how much is on this slide, but truly the new stack has changed the equation for us. We were already getting a lot of reliability from our Ascend and BigQuery combination, but obviously it was happening at BigQuery prices. So by bringing in DuckDB as our like new transform engine over here, compute just got so much cheaper. And the best part of that is that we didn't give up speed. Crunchy's Iceberg warehouse, in conjunction with all of this, has made storage costs cheaper. We have great read performance. And then beyond that, we also have amazing compute power. So Ascend has assisted in tying all of this into one piece. But I think the key takeaway here from everything was that we were able to save money without sacrificing any performance, which is not something you can commonly say. And honestly, I wasn't super optimistic when I started this project. So I'm really glad to come out of it saying that we were able to do both. Second, Ascend made the migration so much less risky than it otherwise would have been. We were able to stand up Crunchy in parallel with BigQuery still running as our production pipeline. And because of that, and because Ascend was tracking states and lineage, we could basically gradually migrate each of our data sets over. So if you're really just thinking of like every team has that like flip the switch moment with migrations, we were able to avoid that entirely. And I was able to confidently keep building and iterating without breaking anything on, the production end of things. And I hope if you asked our like C-suite team, they wouldn't even know that this was going on in the background. Things were running super consistently on both sides. I'm glad to not have to deal with two warehouses, but hopefully they did not have issues along the way.
Yeah, that's
Um,
really, just to say, that's really impressive, and most teams don't experience that. So I think that's really cool to hear. I think just bravo to that because that's a really big challenge to operate in both and to have that seamless sort of migration feel.
Honestly, the production versus sandbox, which again was sort of in Gen 2, but so distinctly there in Gen 3, is what made it possible. And it may have dragged out my migration a little bit longer, but it's honestly, I can say was so much cleaner than it otherwise would have been. So very grateful for that opportunity. And then lastly, DuckDB played a huge part in all of this. It smoothed out all of the SQL differences that you have between a BQ and a Postgres. And it's just really become like our universal SQL playground to do things on, like transformations, and catch issues earlier without spending, again, a ton of money on all of those crazy transformations. And yeah, it's been a really cool tool to work with. And I feel like I can play around in it a lot more, knowing that I'm not just going to drive up a crazy bill trying to do crazy transformations or optimize or whatever it may be. So, honestly, a lot of great learnings from this process. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's amazing. I know we're coming up on time here, but we do have a couple minutes for questions. So if you have questions for Shaheen, definitely take advantage of the next couple of minutes with her and her wisdom. Thank you so much for being here. Also, if you want to connect with the Ascend team, there's a QR code there. I do see one question.
Have you ever used other tools like Fivetran and DBT before, and how does the Send compare? So when I actually started at Podia, they had been using contractors prior to me, and we were on the very typical Fivetran DBT Snowflake combination. And I think my immediate reaction to that is Fivetran's awesome. It does ingest data, one, at what cost, but two, Ascend's entirely different. It pulls things in, but it's allowing you to, again, do your transformations in a state where you're able to see everything, you're able to see pipelines break down, and it's not just like sitting on GitHub code and flowing through your warehouse. And over time, I think, especially in Gen 3, it's become so much more cost effective than the other combinations would have been. So, all of that to say, amazing. I also think you can pull in way more sources into a tool like Ascend than I was ever able to do with Fivetran.
I think that's really interesting. I really value your perspective there. And we love Fivetran. We've partnered with them before. They do great ingest and same with DBT. They're a standard for a reason. But also we built Ascend so that you would have this end-to-end space to work and not have to cobble together multiple tools to have a data stack where you could build your end-to-end pipeline. So that makes a ton of sense. I do see maybe one more question. Do you see that one, Shaheen?
Yes. Isn't DuckDB an in-memory OLAP data source? How did you scale up your servers running these instances? So honestly, we've stayed on medium servers, and I have not had an issue even on larger, trying to like backfill our larger like subscription state daily tables, etc. Ran in under 5 minutes. I was chunking them in years. But again, in terms of storage itself, it's all flowing into Iceberg tables, which make it a lot faster to query on the back end. But DuckDB is truly a lot faster than I thought it would be, especially given it is OLAP.
That's amazing. Well, we are at time. Shaheen, thank you so much for all of your insights. We'll send a follow-up email with this recording. And yeah, we thank you, Shaheen, for being here and for everyone for joining us. And we'll see you around later.
Thanks so much.